Let's look at this together. A man in flannel walked into a luxury car auction, bypassed the shiny toys, and spent $500 on the ugliest wreck there. The amateur crowd mocked him, and the CEO laughed loudest. Holding a microphone, she publicly paraded her own lack of vision. What those shallow collectors missed was that he saw a future they couldn't even imagine. He was calculating future returns. While they saw scrap metal, his eyes were locked on a masterpiece with immense future value. Stick with me, because his next move showed everyone how blind they really were. The ruined vehicle sat forgotten, dismissed as worthless junk by an untrained, short-sighted crowd. Its roof was crushed, hiding its structural value. Peeling paint and deep surface rust hid the premium steel beneath, a temporary disguise that easily fooled the amateur crowd. Flat tires were easily replaced later. The cracked windshield looked catastrophic, but glass is easily replaced when the frame has rare pedigree. The organizers missed the treasure, leaving it out of the catalog. They labeled Lot 47 with cheap tape, completely blind to the diamond they were selling. To a visionary, the words condition unknown actually mean massive untapped potential. The crowd saw extensive damage while he saw a gold mine. Only Lucas saw past the rust, studying this sleeping giant for 12 minutes. He stood transfixed while his 7-year-old son Cole patiently counted the passing seconds. He remained absolutely frozen, analyzing. Hands in his pockets, his sharp eyes scanned for the underlying bones of a legend. This was not curiosity, it was a master calculating a massive future return. He was reading design cues and structural codes that ordinary buyers couldn't see. Meanwhile, the luxury auction was already 2 hours deep. This elite quarterly event always drew crowds looking for quick prestige. Saturday attracted the usual amateur investors, flashy dealers chasing temporary, ready-made hype. Rich buyers held catalogs, while pretenders acted like they understood actual automotive value. The front rows displayed fully priced showroom models, shiny bait for undisciplined capital. Over-restored mid-century sedans and spotless sports coupes left zero room for future value appreciation. One massive American muscle classic was present, though it had been painted over so thickly that its historical factory identity was entirely buried. Clueless buyers snatched up those shiny status symbols, paying premium prices for yesterday's glory. Lucas ignored that superficial shine, he wanted future growth. The night before, he dug through the catalog, searching for hidden assets while his son played. He instantly filtered out the overpriced, low-yield listings that thrilled average buyers. Then came Lot 47, no photos, no identification, just mystery. Zero ownership history, just those lazy words, condition completely unknown. To him that meant gold. Extensive damage to others meant unmatched future upside. He circled his target, then quietly put his son to bed. Staring at the rust, he tuned out the crowd. He was projecting what this asset could become. That low, long frame proved his pedigree. The damaged roofline had a highly specific slope, a rare pitch belonging to an extremely limited historic vintage production run. The flared rear panels revealed a masterful, high-value design signature. That 1960s geometry was incredibly expensive to engineer, rendering it priceless today. Crouching down, he inspected the panel gaps, confirming the underlying frame was perfectly straight. He stepped back, fully visualizing his future masterpiece. Average minds only see dirt. We spot the classic design hiding underneath. Lucas ran his fingers along the frame, feeling the solid, valuable metal beneath the rust. Like an expert diagnosing a patient, he knew the strong bones were still there. Cole tugged his arm. "Is this one ours, Dad?" Lucas looked down at his boy. The boy held a small toy car, a worn-out blue coupe he carried everywhere. Years of constant play had rubbed the paint, almost completely bare. It was his anchor, the familiar object he turned to whenever he felt anxious or tired. Lucas knelt down next to him. "What do you see here?" Cole studied the ruined frame, squinting his eyes to search for the hidden potential inside. Then he held up his small toy. The roof lines matched. It had the same pitch and elegance hiding beneath a ruined exterior. "It looks like mine," Cole whispered, and Lucas gave a slow nod. He stood tall and walked straight toward the main auction block. As bidding on Lot 47 started, the auctioneer sounded embarrassed to even offer this rusted frame. Lacking any real vision, he read the description flatly and let a long silence hang. Nobody bid, complete silence. Then Lucas raised his hand at $500. The auctioneer rushed to close the sale, eager to end an awkward moment. But just before the gavel came down, an interruption broke the peace, the kind that happens when onlookers think you are wasting cash. A sharp voice echoed from behind the ropes right where the VIPs sat. It was just a cluster of expensive chairs around a low table. A setup built solely to make some feel important while treating others as background noise. The dominant razor-sharp voice belonged to the wealthy CEO Violet Ashton. Congratulations. She tossed the word out with that classic fake politeness of the ultra-rich. You just spent $500 on the most expensive pile of scrap metal here. The narrow-minded suits sitting around her instantly burst into cheap laughter. It was the sort of empty laughter that always begs for approval. Violet stood up, a small microphone clipped neatly to her expensive designer blazer. She delivered the insult flawlessly, acting like a typical manager who values holding a room's attention over actually seeing the real value of an asset. Lucas did not even turn around. He kept focusing on Cole, who heard every single word. Looking up at his dad, Cole gripped his little toy tightly, his young face completely frozen in a heavy silence. Lucas placed a reassuring, strong hand on his shoulder to ground him. "We know the real value here," Lucas whispered, keeping their secret vision between them. He walked to the desk and calmly signed the ownership papers. He folded the receipt neatly and slipped it into his chest pocket. Holding Cole's hand, he walked him toward the exit to wait for their truck. Cole looked back just once as they made their exit. He watched the crowd whispering, leaning together, the way short-sighted people do when they think they have won. Then he looked at his blue toy, holding the metal frame a bit tighter. In reality, Violet Ashton lacked the vision to understand people. She built her career purely on fear and the crushing weight of family pressure. She knew that failing in her elite family would bring brutal, immediate consequences. Her stepfather had ruthlessly controlled the company board for 22 years before she was named CEO at age 30. But as we know, true power is never surrendered easily. You and I have seen this before. He handed her that role like a test, tossing her a raw asset to see if she would break it or unlock its future value. She knew she had the vision to multiply its worth. The margins proved it. The firm's projected valuation surged under her forward-thinking leadership. Those high-end events tapped into lucrative, previously unseen buyer markets. She spotted long-term gold in short-term trash far better than any predecessor. She kept investing her own sweat equity, never slowing down. But valuation is fluid, completely dependent on whose long-term lens is analyzing the asset. That Saturday, her boss Owen Hartley watched from 4 feet away in the VIP seats, assessing her future potential. She obsessed over packaging each item to project its maximum potential worth, structuring the room layout to highlight the premium assets and drive up future bids. Then came Lot 47. It went to a blue-collar guy who brought his young kid to a high-end investment event. The room hesitated, but she saw the instant opportunity to secure the transaction and closed it without a second thought. She dismissed the kid as a zero-value distraction. Her focus was already projecting onto the next deal when she spotted the young boy. He stood clutching a toy, looking at her with the raw wonder of a future believer. She kept the revenue engine moving, successfully closing the auction. As the crowd dispersed, Owen acknowledged her performance with a brief nod. For him, that was a solid return. She banked the small win and focused back on long-term growth. That short-term high expired in 4 days. By Wednesday, her assistant Diana brought in a file. Diana was quiet, but she excelled at finding the hidden structural liabilities Violet usually ignored. Inside was the cold data tracking the performance of the latest assets. An internal audit flagged a critical risk. Let's trace this transaction together. Lot 47 came from an outside broker called Reese Acquisitions Group. The mind behind that firm was Dominic Reese, a volatile asset dealer Violet had tolerated for years. He had that slick, polished exterior that screamed major liability, even if the underlying failure was still hidden. The documentation on that asset was completely non-existent. No vehicle identification number on file and absolutely no past title. Just a vague note claiming the asset came from a private portfolio with details locked behind a confidentiality agreement. This was not an impossible scenario. Elite investors often require total discretion. but it bypassed every protective standard. Somehow, it skipped the exact auditing protocols designed to expose structural defects and preserve the firm's future value. Violet analyzed those gaps, calculating the potential fallout. That week, an industry outlet leaked a quiet rumor. No direct targets, just market speculation. Just a warning that compromised assets with wiped histories were being laundered through elite West Coast sales channels. Owen forwarded the leak with a blunt command: protect our brand equity and neutralize this risk immediately. She called the broker the next morning. He answered quickly, spinning a polished narrative designed to inflate trust and cover up the underlying decay. The asset was sourced from a premium private estate, he claimed. The seller had strategic reasons to remain anonymous, completely legitimate ones, he quickly assured her. These unrecorded transactions happened all the time. He offered to produce further validation paperwork if she required it to secure the deal. Violet hung up to analyze her next move. We have all sat in that silence, calculating the ultimate cost. She ordered Diana to grab that auction slip, her paper trail of regret. Lucas Merritt was the buyer. His phone number sat right next to it. She quickly dialed the digits. Lucas answered on the third ring. She delivered her corporate pitch, claiming a wealthy client suddenly recognized the true potential of that wrecked vehicle. She offered $2,000, 4 times his cost. Short-sighted people always think quick cash beats long-term value. Lucas paused for a beat, just a short calculating silence. Thank you, he told her, but no, he immediately hung up. Stunned by his refusal, Violet stared at her phone before slowly placing it face down on her desk. To an amateur eye, the garage behind Lucas's rental house looked like absolute junk. Peeling paint on the doors and a flimsy metal roof that rattled whenever heavy trucks rumbled past. Step inside with me, a total transformation. Hand tools lined the pegboard in remarkably disciplined, perfect rows. A heavy-duty parts washer stood ready in the far corner. An industrial steel workbench stretched across the back wall. Scratched from years of labor, arranged with that intense, careful logic found only where mastery is built. Bright fluorescent tubes lit the ceiling at night, with the big door shut and the power switched on. The shop felt heavy with focus, a space built strictly for restoring future value to dead machinery. Lucas had pieced this space together slowly. Losing his wife 4 years ago broke him, so he kept his hands busy while his son slept. Starting with cheap wrenches, he reinvested his cash to upgrade his gear. He tackled tiny gigs first, brake pads, oil changes, until slowly his business expanded. Word spread locally, eventually bringing in high-value, heavy-duty auto restorations. He still worked at a corporate shop by day, securing a steady income while keeping his nights free to build. But his home garage held the true potential. That was where he honored his father's legacy of invaluable raw skill. Ray Merritt spent 30 years operating a solo auto restoration business in a quiet Ohio town. He never built a massive fortune because quick cash was never his goal. Instead, he possessed an invaluable asset, rare, highly specific mechanical genius. He passed down this priceless wisdom about classic American cars to Lucas, like a king transferring his entire legacy. They invested endless, grueling hours side by side, building mastery through pure repetition. The old man constantly repeated one golden rule of valuation. A vehicle is nothing but a metal history book of its creator's design choices. Master those decisions and you will see exactly how to restore its ultimate value. Ray hammered that lesson so often it stopped being advice. You and I know how that works, it became pure instinct. At 26, Lucas lost his father, inheriting nothing but heavy wrenches. 3 worn repair manuals filled with priceless, handwritten mechanical secrets. And a sharp eye for undervalued engines that he could never turn off when analyzing a rusted, seemingly worthless vehicle. The night a tow truck delivered Lot 47, Lucas waited for his son to sleep before auditing his new asset. He started his assessment with bare hands and a bright flashlight. He studied every dent on the wreck, carefully evaluating the cost of restoration. The core metal frame was completely straight, the foundations was structurally sound. He inspected the main suspension corners, checking the integrity of the factory welds. He checked the deep mounting brackets near the front shocks. What others dismissed as trash, you and I can see as future gold. Most people only saw a wreck, but visionaries knew the damage was cosmetic. You and I understand that a neglected machine still holds its future value, unlike a broken one. On night 2, Lucas uncovered proof of the car's immense future value. Cleaning grime off the door jamb, he found a tiny metal plate riveted to a perfectly solid frame. A rare original production tag, hidden beneath cheap gray primer that some amateur had slapped right over the valuable factory paint. The stamped characters on the plate looked like meaningless junk to ordinary eyes. An average buyer, but they signaled pure gold to a visionary with the right manuals. Lucas dragged his father's old reference manuals to the workbench, searching for the blueprint of its future. He studied for 90 minutes, then sat back to stare at the rusty shell, finally seeing the million-dollar masterpiece within. Cole suddenly stood in the doorway in his pajamas, sleepily rubbing one eye. He came to check on his dad, just like kids do when they need to know their foundation is secure. Nothing was wrong, but the midnight hour was quickly approaching. "Do we know who she is yet, Dad?" Lucas glanced over at his young son. "Getting there," he replied. "Is she special?" Lucas turned back toward the golden project. The harsh overhead bulb spilled across the dented metal, exposing its true structural potential. Suddenly, the shadows highlighted sleek, classic lines, cutting right through the surface dents and ugly rust. Long, flawless curves crafted by a visionary designer who understood timeless value in art. "Yeah," Lucas muttered, "she's incredible." The intense investment of time began that week. He stripped the vehicle systematically, storing and tagging every single part, treating each piece like a valuable long-term asset. The heavy engine finally came out one Saturday, while Cole watched closely, learning how true worth is built from scratch. Sharing stories and dreaming big. He gutted the cabin with the calm patience of a true visionary, who understood that a masterpiece requires flawless execution, and cutting corners would only ruin its ultimate potential. By week 3, his long-term vision faced its first real test. A subtle twist in the left pillar, invisible to anyone who lacked foresight. Spotting it required precision instruments and a highly trained strategic hunch. An expert instinct forged through years of watching his father build value. The frame had warped in the crash that mistakenly sent this masterpiece to the scrap heap. Ignoring this would ruin everything. The entire structure's future value would plummet, and the car would never handle correctly again. He lacked the expensive machinery required. Let's study how he solved this, applying cables, tight anchors, and steady tension over 4 long nights. Young Cole brought his exhausted father some juice right as Lucas worked hard until the dawn sky broke. The boy placed the glass on the bench in absolute silence. Lucas drank it, never drifting his focus from the newly straightened pillar. Rebuilding the engine was the true test. He completely dismantled the entire engine, meticulously cleaning parts and checking tolerances to secure the vehicle's immense future performance. These investment costs were incredibly high on his modest mechanic's pay, so he planned his asset acquisitions carefully over many weeks. He budgeted his money with total focus, ensuring every single dollar served his long-term goal without wasting a cent. But walk with me here, because right across town, the leadership crisis at Ashton Premier Motors began spiraling, threatening the entire company's future value. A major automotive publication exposed the hidden corrupt practices draining value from the luxury auto market. Most people see junk, but visionaries spot future value. Now 2 clients finally spoke up. Both bought cars with messy, incomplete history records. Owen Hartley bypassed the usual memos this time. He placed a direct call. His voice was pure corporate, completely calm, ice-cold, and entirely focused on the bottom line. He didn't need to threaten out loud. The warning was crystal clear. He expected Violet to protect their investment and clean up this mess immediately. He simply needed to ensure she understood the high stakes and tight deadline. Violet understood the urgency completely. She ordered Diana to retrieve the full files on every single auction lot Dominic Reese had sold over the past 4 years. 11 total lots, 9 of them had perfectly clean titles. 2 had issues. Since lot 47 was recent, she immediately called Dominic again. This time his tone shifted slightly, still smooth but heavily guarded. It carried the nervous edge of a man realizing his cheap scams were finally catching up. He suggested that if the missing paperwork posed an actual risk, perhaps they could quietly resolve it through a lucrative off-market deal. He pitched an arrangement twice, but Violet just cut the line on him. She looked back at the buyer listed on the file, Lucas Merritt. She tried his number, nothing but empty silence. She left no message. She quickly deleted his number from her recent call history. Leaning back, she stared blankly at the framed corporate motto hanging on the wall opposite her desk. A bold statement about trust and vehicle history that her stepfather had created. Custom-made in polished metal letters during their office remodel 3 years ago. She didn't waste her time looking at those empty words for long. Now, stick with me. 10 weeks after a tow truck dropped that worthless metal wreck in his garage, the future Lucas had been building arrived on a Thursday night. The engine was secured. The bent frame was perfectly aligned. Every worn-out component had been systematically replaced with new parts. And he carefully restored every single original piece worth saving. Before prepping the exterior or spraying any paint, he needed to know if the heart of this classic car was ready to run. He waited patiently until Cole was sound asleep. Entering the garage, he closed the heavy door and sat in silence with the masterpiece he was bringing to life. He honored a timeless lesson his father had passed down. You always share a quiet moment with a project car before starting the engine for the first time. Not for diagnostics, but because witnessing true potential fully restored deserves a moment of quiet respect before starting up. He got up, knocked twice on the back door, and his son appeared within 30 seconds flat. Completely awake, the way children get at 10 o'clock when they know something incredible is about to happen. The boy clutched his small stuffed bear tightly, a comfort toy he only held when caught between intense excitement and fear. Lucas gestured toward an old rusty folding chair nearby. Cole walked over, sat down, hugged his bear tightly, and remained completely silent. The father checked the fuel line again, inspecting the ignition wires and battery connections. Then he opened the heavy driver's door and climbed inside for the big reveal. The seat felt premium and brand new, while the original steering wheel fit naturally in his hands. He adjusted the rearview mirror, even though only a dusty pegboard was visible on the wall behind him. He inserted the key and turned the ignition with hope. The result was a single dry sputter followed by absolute silence. The second try sparked a rough cough, a violent shudder signaling the dormant giant beneath the floorboards. Lucas adjusted the fuel mixture, then engaged the ignition, looking for that spark. On that third crank, the classic engine caught, proving his foresight was correct. You and I know that deep, rolling growl, the steady, powerful rhythm of resurrected muscle returning to life. His son Cole immediately jumped from his chair, sensing the magic. He drifted to the front of this classic project, toy dangling, staring at the rumbling hood of a true future masterpiece in the making. The engine roared on as Lucas sat inside, savoring the massive potential he had unlocked. Cole turned to his father, utterly speechless at what belief could build. The boy flashed a massive, proud grin, finally seeing his dad's vision. Lucas cut the engine, letting the quiet room speak for itself. He lingered, tasting the quiet success of a future victory. He stepped out, joining his son to admire their highly valuable investment. "Does it have a name yet?" Cole asked. "What do you think?" Cole studied the reviving masterpiece, seeing past the raw metal. Average people only saw a pile of junk, but visionaries always look past the rust. The boy tilted his head, displaying the exact same instinct for recognizing future potential. "Blue," he declared. "It is going to be blue." "Car is not painted yet," Lucas chuckled. "Does not matter." "I know what color it is." Lucas studied the frame. "Blue," he agreed. "Okay." Weeks earlier, the visionary had messaged a user on a classic car forum. A legendary appraiser known online as Garage Ghost 71. This legendary expert was famous for identifying rare, high-value assets with absolute, razor-sharp precision. Lucas sent over detailed photos of the original production tag. He included the stamped serial numbers from the rear engine block, plus 3 secret identifying marks he uncovered while stripping the wreck. Then he waited. The expert finally replied late Thursday, just before 11. The detailed report was far longer than Lucas had ever expected. "Let's look closer." He stood by the workbench, reading the words carefully. This classic machine was actually one of just 214 units ever manufactured. This particular batch belonged to a secret export program, completely ghosted from standard factory history. Almost all of these high-value models had been lost to history. Their true identities were swallowed up by a sea of common rides. Only a tiny fraction had ever emerged to command astronomical collector prices. One sold at auction in 2019 for nearly $110,000. That highly valuable asset vanished entirely during transport. An official recovery claim was filed the very next year, leaving its status completely unresolved. Garage Ghost 71 closed his message with one massive question. "Are you certain of what you have?" Lucas replied with 3 words, "I am certain now." He set the phone down, staring at his $500 investment glowing under the harsh lights. The powerful engine was secure, the valuable frame perfectly straight. Though weeks of bodywork remained, his high-yield future asset was already right there. He had unlocked its true history, realizing the immense future worth of this machine. He knew his own father would have laughed at this project initially. Not out of pure disbelief, but with the deep satisfaction of a visionary who recognizes massive value in forgotten junk. After all, the biggest fortunes go to those who see what things can become. Let's start by examining what Lucas found on his workbench, a tiny round badge in a plastic sleeve. He pulled that hidden gem of potential right out from under the grimy seat tracks. A vintage Western Car Club emblem. It read States Classic Automobile Association on the back, stamped 1971. That badge proved this classic ride once had immense value to someone who loved it. It held real pride once. He remembered the 2019 auction where he bought it. He recalled how CEO Dominic Reese looked relieved to unload what he saw as mere scrap. While others ignored the junker, Lucas stayed in his shop working long past midnight. Finally heading inside, he crashed into bed and set his early morning alarm. His son Cole had art class and breakfast couldn't wait. On Monday, he reached out to the National Classic Automobile Registry. He provided the VIN and the original production codes. He shared the purchase details to verify himself as the true owner. He calmly explained how he acquired the abandoned vintage car. It was a legitimate public auction, and his paperwork was absolutely flawless. He didn't waste time pointing fingers or blaming anyone. He simply needed the classic car's rich history updated, suggesting that the registry's 2019 recovery file held the key to its true identity. The representative noted his details, saying the verification could take 10 business days. It took only 6. Stick with me because week 14 changed everything. Lucas ignored fleeting trends, choosing the timeless factory original color instead. A stunning cobalt blue hidden deep inside one of his father's old manuals. It was a hidden code that ordinary people would overlook without a thought. He mixed that custom batch himself, matching it to a perfect paint sample hidden beneath a door seal. 3 meticulous coats beautifully hand-polished to perfection. One bright Saturday morning, he finally rolled his masterpiece out into the spring sun. As sunlight hit the fresh paint, the brilliant deep blue glow proved his vision was correct. Every panel aligned beautifully and flawlessly. The restored chrome gleamed like a silver mirror, reflecting the trees in an unbroken line. Resting on the driveway, the classic car was now an undeniable masterpiece. It was a machine designed by true legendary craftsmen who mastered their trade, now fully restored to its ultimate potential. His quiet neighbor, who usually stayed to himself, slowly walked across the street. He stopped at the edge of the lawn, staring silently with hands in pockets. "I don't know what I'm looking at," Harold muttered, "but it's magnificent." Cole ran onto the porch in his socks, stopping dead in astonishment. He stared at the gleaming vehicle for 10 seconds, completely speechless. He bolted inside to grab his small blue toy car. Placing the toy on the hood, he compared them, one worn, the other absolutely flawless. One was cheap mass production, the other a masterpiece created through weeks of focused late-night dedication. "They're exactly the same," Cole whispered. "Pretty close," Lucas smiled. Cole climbed into the passenger seat and placed his toy on the dashboard. He sat up tall, staring proudly ahead, out through the windshield, showing us what future value truly looks like. He whispered, "This blue machine is bigger than I thought." "Most things are," Lucas said, "when you finally get inside them." That afternoon, the registry replied a polite email masking a massive future liability. The vehicle identification numbers flagged a match with a stolen vehicle recovery claim from 2020. Official agency records clearly showed that the original buyer from the 2019 Christie's auction, never received their asset. Now, investigators were reaching out to everyone to trace the asset's true chain of title. They thanked Lucas for his valuable cooperation and warned him to secure every piece of original purchase paperwork. He printed the email, filing it away like a blueprint for future protection. 2 days later, the registry dialed the luxury office of CEO Violet Ashton. She was stuck in a tedious quarterly review meeting when Diana marched straight to the glass wall of the conference room and held her phone up. Having built this business together, Violet read the silent warning. A look that meant this threat to their business could not wait. Violet excused herself to take the call in the quiet hallway. The agent was highly professional, clarifying that her elite dealership was not under active investigation. They simply needed the firm to hand over any relevant records for Lot 47 from last quarter's lucrative auction, because the asset's identity had suddenly resurfaced in an active recovery case. They thanked the CEO for her time. Violet returned, immediately ended the meeting, and ordered the heavy doors shut behind her team. She sat alone at that massive boardroom table for 11 minutes. Finally, she commanded the empty room, "Get me everything on Lot 47. The transaction files revealed the ugly truth she had refused to admit out loud. The Reese Acquisitions Group paperwork featured a vehicle identification number that was blatantly false. Let's face it, you and I know this was no simple mistake. It was the kind of sophisticated forgery only a professional makes to beat the system. The superficial details in the file completely ignored the actual wrecked frame sitting on the lot. The deception was total. She dialed Owen, but the CEO was unfazed. He simply instructed her to protect their corporate compliance at all costs. He smoothly pointed out that shifting the blame to a rogue third-party broker working behind their backs would create a completely different legal reality from proving negligence on the dealership's part. He spoke with cold calculation, hiding behind corporate spin. Violet understood perfectly. She bypassed Dominic completely, dialing his expensive defense lawyer instead. The call was brief. Next, she secured Lucas Merritt's address from Diana and drove out alone. Night fell across the quiet, sleeping city. She didn't try to plan her words, only stopping when she parked outside his modest house. Staring at the garage, she watched the warm light spill from beneath the door, a quiet sign of true work. She paused in the dark car before finally stepping out. A faint radio hummed through the cheap wooden walls before she knocked. He opened the side door, clad in dirty work trousers and a simple gray shirt, analyzing her with complete composure. "We know that look. It's the sudden realization of immense potential standing right before you." Violet laid out the immediate facts of the registry call. She pointed out the messy paperwork Dominic Reese used to cover his tracks. "You and I know corporate only cares if this auction sale is legally bulletproof right now." And the deal was rock solid. Lucas legally acquired that worthless scrap heap, seeing past its ruined state. Past liabilities belonged to someone else. His future asset was clean. Then she froze. Lucas stepped aside. Under the bright garage lights, the worthless salvage was gone, replaced by a flawless deep blue masterpiece. Her voice vanished. This expert had appraised thousands of classic cars before. She spent her life measuring current worth, building a career on evaluation. Yet she stared blankly at this one. Suddenly, she understood the hidden value Lucas had recognized in that wreckage. The gold hidden in that wreckage, while she stood holding a microphone, playing to the crowd, completely blind to its true potential. "Did you know its true value back then?" she asked. "I had a feeling," Lucas replied. "And you still tipped off the registry?" "Of course." She went silent. "You could have quietly flipped it. Kept the cash. Nobody would know." Lucas just stared back. "Someone in Colorado would. The guy who bought this classic in 2019. He paused. "And I would know." Right then, the door connecting the garage and house clicked open. Young Cole stood there barefoot, stepping forward with cautious hesitation, the way kids do when interrupting serious adult conversations. He looked at Violet, then his dad, and finally at the masterpiece. "Is she here to look at blue?" Cole asked. "She is," Lucas answered. Cole looked at Violet, speaking with that pure, unfiltered honesty only a young child possesses. "It turned out great," he said. "My dad fixed it." Violet watched him quietly. Her eyes drifted over the restored masterpiece. Her old arrogant tone was completely gone. No crowd, no superficial showmanship remaining. Just quiet respect for real value created. Yes, she whispered, he did. Now watch how this unfolded. The case against Dominic went on without Lucas. The registry and lawyers proved the vehicle's true history through a clear paper trail. Those fraudulent records were incredibly simple to track and pin down. Dominic's superficial empire quickly became the target of an official probe. Ashton Premier Motors offered its full cooperation. Since the clear paper trail proved that the firm was misled by the broker, their legal risk remained virtually non-existent. Owen Hartley never actually said thank you, but at least his demanding calls finally stopped. Lucas only spoke once with the buyer from Colorado. Walter was 78 and originally bought the classic at Christie's, driven by the memory of a matching model from his youth. He spent decades looking for a masterpiece to capture that lost value. When Lucas explained how he restored the salvage car to absolute perfection, Walter stayed silent for so long, Lucas thought the connection was lost. Then the old man whispered, "You unlocked the potential I never could have, even back then." They arranged the exchange without any lawyers. Walter's truck arrived early Tuesday morning to load the completed masterpiece, and Lucas. We both recognized that sound. Lucas was cleaning up as the transport truck arrived for his masterpiece. Little Cole stood at the edge, clutching a blue toy car, witnessing his dad's vision pay off. He watched that restored classic load up, its immaculate blue paint catching the sun, proof of what vision can build from scrap. But the boy didn't cry. Like his father, he was already learning to analyze the details quietly, calculating the true worth of things. Once the truck vanished and the diesel faded, Cole stared at the empty bay, seeing only future potential. Just a clean, empty canvas. The concrete where a $500 wreck became a masterpiece over 14 weeks, leaving only a faint oil stain. "Are you sad, Dad?" Cole asked him. Lucas stood beside him, resting a heavy hand on the kid's shoulder. "A little," he added. "But I'm not sorry." Cole chewed on that. "What's the difference?" Lucas looked down at him. "Being sorry means you wish you took another path. Being sad just means you knew the work mattered." He paused. "Scrapping it was easy, the right path took real vision. But you still feel proud when you invest in the future." Cole processed this lesson slowly, learning how successful minds look ahead. Then he nodded, the quiet way he did when a priceless life lesson finally clicked. That massive payout Lucas received from Walter, it easily covered 2 full years of rent. Plus, it bought the commercial hydraulic lift and heavy-duty engine stand to fuel his next big builds. You and I know this wasn't luck, it was strategic foresight. It was the ultimate, well-deserved return on investment. For someone who saw future value, did the work, and claimed his reward. He reinvested wisely, putting most funds in savings and upgrading his tools for future growth. Just 8 days later, the corporate world came calling as Violet reached out. She admitted her firm was completely overhauling their appraisal process, adding the rigorous verification they should have used from day one. She told him that the executive board definitely took notice. Even the CEO Owen quietly acknowledged his foresight, even if she kept it unnamed, that their crisis was averted only because the car ended up with a true visionary. Then she asked if he would be open to consulting for Ashton Premier Motors, scouting high-value assets in the rough, authenticating heritage assets, and she was ready to talk serious numbers. No empty apologies, just a strategic partnership built on his rare high-value expertise. Lucas simply said he would analyze the offer. "That is completely fair," she replied, genuinely respecting his position. He hung up, standing amidst his newly upgraded facility, surrounded by premium tools and elite gear built for future success. The workshop was optimized and waiting, poised between one realized triumph and the next undervalued asset. The bay where blue was restored was clean, the past fading to make room for the future. That rare 1971 club badge sat protected in a sleeve on the workbench, right next to a thick manila folder. It held the car's history, beside his father's legacy manuals, filled with invaluable notes that unlocked this future. He kept that badge as a reminder. You and I know why. A piece of that legendary history belonged right where its future was unlocked. Little Cole, his future successor, stepped in. He still held the blue toy, but with new respect, now seeing the incredible potential hidden inside. He stepped back. While others only saw a $500 wreck, he saw a future masterpiece. "Dad," his son asked, "what's the next project?" Lucas looked at his boy, then stared past the garage doors, searching for their next hidden gem. Morning sunlight poured in from the east, highlighting the promise of a fresh start. It lit up the concrete and tools. "You and I know that empty space was waiting for another discarded treasure." "Not sure yet," Lucas smiled. "But we will spot that future value instantly."